So this is a real quick introduction to what you're about to hear. I think this was from my first podcast I ever did years ago at this point. It might have been my second. I don't remember the order of the first two. But a long time ago, I had a podcast with a friend named Charlie, who I met on Xbox Live on the 360, which sounds nerdy as hell, but that's fine. Eventually, him and I forget how we started even talking more than usual, but we had a friendship that blossomed into, hey, let's talk on Skype all the time. And that blossomed into, hey, let's do a podcast together. And we decided to do it just based off of, I think I was going through some depression shit at the time, to be honest with you. And I was like, I need something to take my mind off of things. What better than to talk to someone that lives in London, or at least England, like way the fuck across the Atlantic Ocean. So we're trying to think of good names for our show. And we were like, how about we do the airports that are closest to our homes? So we came up with LVI to Heathrow, which was remotely close for both of us to the closest airports to our houses and their flight codes, basically. I mean, Heathrow is HEA or HTH or something like that. So it didn't really work for him, but the name flows off the tongue. And so we did it for a couple months. I actually ended up going to visit the dude for a week. He let me in his home. I got to chill in his house and see London for pretty much a free trip, which was one of the coolest things I ever got to do, I think. I was a young, supple 25 or 26-year-old, which is interesting to go out and do by yourself for the first time, like flying across the Atlantic Ocean. Pretty interesting, pretty sweet. But at one point, whenever Smodcast first took off and they got their own, he made his own like radio station, Smodco, they were offering ads where if you paid, I think it was $250 for right when it first launched, you could have Kevin read your ad on whatever show that you wanted him to read it on. So I picked the morning one with him and his wife, and me and Charlie were like, this is an awesome fucking idea. And then they basically give you this real blank form of like, that it's the agreement of Kevin will put his own spin on it, as Kevin Smith does, and you basically write down all the information you want to do. So Charlie left it up to me to write our script for what we want Kevin Smith to write. And I've loved Kevin Smith almost my entire life growing up. As soon as I saw Mallrats for the first time, I thought the movie was fucking awesome. As I got older and he started doing his own podcast and his book and all of his talks, I was like, he's pretty much like very idolish for me for the whole podcasting thing and the whole speaking online, and you can be funny when people tell you you're not. You can do your own shit whenever you want to. But one of the greatest moments ever was hearing Kevin Smith read my written advertisement and putting his own Kevin Smithy, oh, you can only see my face, Kevin Smithy spin on it. So coming at you now, just so I have it recorded somewhere for posterity once again, is the ad that I wrote for Kevin Smith to read. And I still think it's funny as fuck knowing that I wrote it, but hopefully it makes you laugh too, because there's a couple things that Kevin says in it that makes me super proud of what I wrote and what I told him. And it was like having your idol say like, hey, you're awesome yourself. So without further ado, here is my Smodcast ad for Kevin and his wife's podcast. And I know his wife didn't like it. You will hear the disdain in her voice for some of the things I said. His wife is a super feminist, so I'm sure some of the things I wrote were a little offensive. And when they get to the point of when he says, I wonder what shows he doesn't like, I wonder which one he's not talking about, and he says, oh, Jen, I think he's talking about you, they both kind of agree that she wasn't the right clientele for this, and she was correct. She was the person I was leaving out of the comparisons. But again, without further ado, here's one of my favorite things of all time.
Because how often do you get to do a fucking ad for poetry? When's the last time you were listening to the radio and some fat fuck was like, buy a book of poems? Nobody.
Yeah, I have no recollection.
Only
of that.
on Sir does that fucking happen. Smodcast Internet Radio, where a motherfucker like Brett Allen Coker is a king for 2 minutes. Just like our last sponsor, the LVI to Heathrow podcast. U.S. We get a lot of podcast sponsors. That's what I kind of dig about our podcast is we just have other podcasts do ads. It would be like NBC running ads for CBS, I would think. No?
U.S. versus UK. Old versus young.
Katie
Toby
Couric
versus Charlie.
Would be all over it.
Don't start with that again.
I'm on all the networks now. Katie Couric.
All right.
I've been had by NBC. CBS had me, and now ABC is going to have its way with Katie Couric. I wonder if has there been any anchor that's ever been on all three networks? That's historic.
Megan, please.
I'm trying to give a woman some props. Yeah,
you're not. You're like.
Because that's the only reason she's doing it. Either that or they're paying a shit ton of money. But remember, she took the job at CBS, the evening news, tried to put it into first place, never came out of third place. So if you're hiring at ABC, they called it Operation Ginger. Bob Iger's been trying to hire, and they want to get Matt Lauer as well, because they're like, every ginger needs a Fred. I was like, yeah, you keep using those old-timey fucking references and going after TV hosts nobody gives a fuck about. We'll see the ratings jump.
I read all of my news.
Exactly. And it's just like, why are people always trying to relive glory days? Like, oh, the Today Show was so great 20 years ago. Let's make it happen again with these two.
Ginger and Fred.
Ugh. How about a new idea, America?
All right, well, let's go
American
with one
networks.
Right here.
Go
LVI to Heathrow podcast.
U.S. versus the U.K. Old versus young. Toby versus Charlie. Everyone has embarrassing childhood stories, but not everyone wants to share them. Yeah.
I can't relate to that, being married to Kevin Smith, where he's just like, and then?
Networks founded on being fucking sharing. Good thing that we don't mind talking about those mystery boners in high school math class. Oh, shit. There's a whole podcast about boners in math class. It means nothing to you, but to me, they're speaking. This is like discovering the Bible for the first time. This is like somebody talking about Jesus to you, and you're like, yeah, I get that. Yeah, where's he been all my life? I've had mystery boners in math class. Maybe you haven't.
Anywho, always
What's the female
a surprise.
equivalent? Like hard nipples in math class or something like that? But you always get hard nipples.
There is no equivalent.
To a man? You're right, baby. You got nothing to throw. Stop it.
I do. I have a whole thing of highlighters here.
Always a surprise about what topics are going to come up as we jump around more than a swinger at a Nymphomaniacs Anonymous meeting. Is that what goes on there? That's in the copy right there. Jennifer's like, what the fuck? Learn all types of life survival techniques like how not to talk to girls, how to be a drunk, and how to make only yourself laugh and more, aka the Kevin Smith story. Constantly looking for listener interaction. We read emails, and they answer them right on the show. That's an idea we should totally steal. We should open a viewer mailbag.
Right on.
Ralph does it on Hollywood Babylon, and it's like worth 20 minutes every week. There's always gold, because people out there are way funnier than us. And they'll write, Dear Jennifer, have you ever thought about calling Kevin Heavy Kevy? Love fucking, from Pacoima. And then we start talking, well, dear, have you ever thought about calling me Heavy Kevy? And you're like, oh,
I will say no. That will be the end of the story.
No, but that's like 30 seconds right there. We've killed time. Constantly looking for listener interaction, man. Send them emails. They're going to read them right on the show. If you don't like it, feel like you wasted their time, like they wasted your fucking time, hard-earned time, email and complain and get a free personalized apology from one of the guys. That's adorable. If you're fans of Joe Rogan's podcast, the Drunk Tank podcast, and most of the shows on the Smodcast Network, what does that mean, most?
I have no idea.
Which ones are they leaving off?
I'm pretty sure they're not selling to me.
He's leaving +1 off that list. He doesn't like you. Then you will
I'm cool with that.
Then you will love us. Our weekly Monday morning releases are an FDA-approved cure for having the case of the Mondays. This message is not approved by the FDA. Find us on iTunes. That's where you're going to find LVI to Heathrow. That's what you're looking up, LVI to Heathrow on iTunes. Or subscribe on their blog at http://LVITO Heathrow, like the airport, which for those of you who've never traveled there,
blogspot.com
has an A in it. Blogspot. This guy needs to hook up with the domain name dude from earlier in the show.
When coasts collide.
When coasts collide. And get a shorter, easier to remember fucking Earl, I think. Two of our sponsors could use one another. Imagine they met on our show and got married. Wouldn't that be lovely?
It totally would.
I think LVI is going to marry domain name guy.
You can marry them.
That'd be sweet. And then Megan and Alan could get married, and we'll live happily ever after.
Check them out, man, on lvitoheathrow.blogspot.com. Give me a bumper, James.